There's a lot of great things said there. First, I want to say for John, it's very spot on. That doesn't matter where the talent is, but when you're building a company, you need every ounce of resource, and every person you hire sequentially, especially in the first 10, 20, and 30 hires, needs to be substantially better than your previous hire. You have to constantly upskill. It's not easy, especially when you're in a really competitive space like building and technology. But I have a personal, one of the things that I like to do is ask, almost all my engineers are out of country, some of my engineering talent is in Mexico, some in Brazil. But one of the biggest questions that I ask them when I'm onboarding and what will take them to kind of later rounds is are they willing and able in the next 2 years as we hit subsequent company milestones to relocate? One, because personally, I just like the in-person camaraderie that you get. There's some real, both of them have their benefits and their drawbacks. Some people are just not willing to do that anymore in the world that we live in. But if you can get people at that kind of sweet spot where they're willing to transition, now we're bringing, really highly educated, high income earners to the region. So where I live, it's in Weslaco, and I work a lot out of eBridge. I go to McAllen, all over the valley. I kind of look at it as one place, the way that I travel so often inside of it. But speaking on talent and trends there as a founder, but from what has changed, in my opinion, of the valley is quite have an interesting take, because I actually showed up at the eBridge building in Brownsville. For those who don't know, Brownsville has this really incredible resource that they invested, placed a pretty big bet on in downtown Brownsville, which is called the eBridge Center. And it's basically a center for innovation and incubation and a gathering place for people with crazy ideas in the region.
And who leads the eBridge?
Say again?
Who leads the eBridge?
That's BZNC, yeah, and with Nathan, and it's the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation, UTRGV. There's so many incredible resources there. And that has had such a major impact on the outcomes that we've had as a startup. So for those who don't know, we really focus on building the tools and software and financing for exporters and importers. Specifically, we started with a focus on fresh produce trade between Mexico and the United States. And as we all know, the Rio Grande Valley is a huge import-export region for fresh produce. It's actually the number one port of entry in fresh produce in the United States is in the Kalamazoo area. So we wouldn't have even started the company if we didn't know that these problem sets existed. So I think there's actually a really interesting opportunity that we have in border regions, right? In places like Brownsville, McAllen, Laredo, Eagle Pass, El Paso. Actually, I go to a lot of these towns often and meet with different importers, exporters, and business leaders. We have interesting problems that not everyone has. We're a terrestrial border between Mexico and the United States, and you can find that those problems, if you can solve them well, there's a lot of other countries that have terrestrial borders next to each other, and it's problem sets that scale, and you can really build a venture-backed technology company to solve those problems, and they can start here in this region. And it's, I think, kind of sitting in plain sight for certain people, and maybe they're used to solving them at the local level. But if you abstract that, you can really build something incredible, and I think have a vision and a goal that could be really interesting coming out of the region. So that's some of the stuff I've seen that's changed. Perspectives. There is, as far as I know, no venture fund in the South Texas area where I live. From McAllen to Brownsville, there exists no real institutional investors. I think that's a really big missed opportunity, just for a lot of reasons. I think there's some really cool ideas. I'll give a shout out to a city who has done an excellent job and continues to do an excellent job at that, and that's El Paso. Aldaz Capital is one of our investors, and they specifically have really good understanding of what we were doing because they're in a border region, right? They're between El Paso and Juarez. They understand trade. They understand the scope of the market. When I was out racing our first round, it was people just didn't see McAllen. They were like, McAllen, what is that? Most people, I would ask them like, oh, have you guys ever heard of McAllen, to start the conversation off with some VCs? Most of them had no clue. And then I told them like, oh, just in celery last year, they crossed $200 million worth of celery. And then their eyes light up. They're like, oh, there's like a market there. There's something there that can, scale and grow. But I think that it would be really interesting for anyone in the audience that knows family offices or has a family office, take an opportunity to look at some of the deals from partners that are in border regions like Brownsville, like town that are trying to raise a fund. I know one particular fund manager who had such a it's pretty difficult to raise a fund right now, but he had a really difficult time raising a fund for a period of time. Now he's closing, and it's really exciting. He's starting the journey of investing. But it took a lot longer than I think it should have, right? He's in another border region in Texas, and I think there's a ton of opportunity there. So keep your eyes peeled for that. If you see anyone, promote them, get them to the right people. I think I'm really excited about the next 5 years for the Valley, in a sense that is the economic impact of a really good incubation and a really good technology ecosystem really can't be understated. I was actually just like doing some deep research with an LLM, and last night until like 2 a.m. this morning, trying to take case studies of like, where did this go right? And there's like several that you find where a public-private partnership really led to like thousands of really high-paying jobs and hundreds of millions of dollars in venture investment into these ideas and concepts. And I think we have some really good momentum in the Valley. And I think like each of the cities are coming together to build a collective ecosystem. I really liked RKB Startup Week. That was a really great event that highlighted through several different cities what's going on. And I personally get to see a lot of the young entrepreneurs that are going through the startup programs that I went through in the area. And as long as several of kind of like the front runners of the pack keep blazing the trail, like people will be able to come back and invest. There will be other VCs, other angels that have seen success in the portfolio from these companies. They'll want to double down into the area. So I think it's a really, really exciting time. And there's a lot of talent recycling that will happen between some larger companies like SpaceX. People will get burnt out. They'll be like, I want to do something exciting for myself. I've learned all these really interesting skills, and then I'm going to have to go somewhere else to do that. Right? They're going to be in a place that had an infrastructure, that has other case studies of success, and there's also resources available from both the cities and from private investment for them to grow and do that there. So I'm really excited about the next 5 years. That might say one thing real quick. If anyone knows importers or exporters, come talk to me. We're still a startup. I need all the help I can get. I'm sure John will do a shout out for watching it. But importers or exporters, anybody in Mexico, US, or Asia to US, come talk to me, please.